Welcome to the instructional video on Photoshop. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to do cropping, resizing, color adjustments, exporting to different file types, adding text, transparent backgrounds, and everybody's favorite clone stamp. Let's get started. If you're going to be working with an existing photo, the first thing you want to do is go to File, Open, find the photo on the file system, click Open. In Photoshop, by default, the image window is docked to the main window. If you want to have it as a separate floating window, click on the title bar, drag it off, and now it's a separate floating window. And this is kind of nice if you're working with multiple photographs. It's really whatever your preference is. While we're moving around and resizing windows here, let me point out the difference between the size of the image on the file and the display size. If you look at the bottom of the image, it says 25%. What that means is the image that's being displayed here is 25% the size of the original image. And if I change that to 100, that shows me the size of the image on the file system. And so it's a rather large image. It's directly from the camera. And so I guess what I want to point out here and make clear is if you change the display size here to something that's easier to manage as you're editing, you're not actually changing the image size. A little bit later I'll show you how to change the actual size of the image on the file system. The first edit I'm going to demonstrate is cropping. Rarely do you get the framing right when you take a picture with your camera. For example, in this picture, the plane is pointed left here, but there's more space in the photo to the right, and that just looks kind of odd to your eye. And there's probably more sky in the picture than is what we would like also. And so we could get the framing a little bit better, and you can do that with the cropping tool. So to crop an image, select the crop tool from the tools palette. And let me point out something that's a little tricky here with Photoshop. So there's a limited amount of space for tools over here, and one of the ways that they're making better use of the space is there's multiple tools under each one of these icons. And so there's a triangle in the lower right, and if you click that triangle, you'll see other options for this particular tool. And the reason I point that out is maybe you go over to the tools palette looking for the cropping tool and you don't see it. It should be up towards the top here. You might see the slice tool. And so if you don't see the cropping tool, you want to click on that triangle in the lower right and find the crop tool. And then to select the crop tool, I'm going to click it. And then to crop the image, I'm going to click and drag across the image. Now don't worry about getting the precise dimensions as you're clicking and dragging, because once you release the cursor, you'll have a chance to grab the corners or the sides and to get the crop more precise. And it's a lot easier to get the precise dimensions that you want by clicking and dragging the corners. Okay, so that looks like what we wanted to accomplish. So we wanted to have more empty space on the left here and then less sky, and so that looks pretty good. And then so to apply the crop, I've just set the dimensions now. So to apply it, to actually do the crop, I'm going to right click and then select crop. I'm going to undo this crop because there's something else that I want to demonstrate, and that is cropping with a fixed aspect ratio. And I guess while we're talking about undo, Photoshop is a little special here. It has step forward, step backwards for its undo or redo. And so to undo this crop, I'm going to select step backwards. So what I wanted to demonstrate, the reason I undid that crop was I want to demonstrate cropping at a fixed aspect ratio. One of the reasons I'm cropping this image is I plan to use it in a high definition video. And high definition video has a certain aspect ratio, and that random crop that I just did might not be the same aspect ratio as high definition video. So if you want it to look nice, you need to crop at the same aspect ratio as where you plan to use the photo. And so I plan to use this in a high definition video, which has an aspect ratio of 16:9. And so maybe I should explain aspect ratio real quick. If you look at a high definition television, you notice that it's wider than it is tall. And so its aspect ratio is 16 by 9. If it's 16 units wide, it's 9 units tall. And so that's the aspect ratio of high definition video. In the terms of pixels, high definition video is 1920 by 1080. And so that would be the same aspect ratio of 16 by 9. So let's crop this image at an aspect ratio that is correct for high definition video. And to do that, you need to select the rectangle selection tool here. And again, it might not be showing because again, there's multiple tools behind each one of these icons. So if you don't see it here, you're going to click and hold the triangle in the lower right here, select the rectangle tool. And then I guess before I select with this, I need to say that I'm selecting at a fixed aspect ratio. So let me select that option there. And actually the aspect ratio that I want, which is a common one, has already been typed in here for me. So if that wasn't there, I would have to enter whatever aspect ratio that I wanted to select at. And now I can select. And now when I select, you notice that it's kind of constrained here. It's constrained to the aspect ratio of 16 by 9, which is going to be perfect for high definition video. And you don't get the luxury of being able to drag on the corners here, so it's not quite as nice as the other one, but at least you're going to get the perfect aspect ratio. So that looks pretty good, I guess. And now to apply the crop, I'm going to go to Image, Crop. And that's how you crop at a certain aspect ratio. The next edit I want to demonstrate is resizing. That is, resizing the size of an image on the file system and not just the display size that we were looking at earlier. You might want to resize an image if you're planning on sending it via email or embedding it on a web page and you don't need a large file, or that is a file with lots of resolution. To resize an image, go to Image, Image Size. And the first thing you probably want to make sure that you have checked is Constrain Proportions. This is that aspect ratio thing that I was talking about earlier. And so if you don't constrain the proportions and you change, maybe we'll do percent, and you change the percent by, I don't know, make it 60%, and you don't change the height, you're going to get a weird looking picture there. And so let's step that backwards. And so as I was saying, if you're resizing an image, go to Image, Image Size, you'll probably want to constrain proportions. That is, keep the same aspect ratio. You get a little icon here that shows what's going on. And so now if I say percent and I say 60, it's going to change the height by a corresponding amount. And I guess if I didn't constrain proportions and I wanted it to be look good, I would have to change the height and width myself and know the exact numbers. But it's a lot easier to say constrain proportions. That's usually what you want. And now it's important to remember that that changes the actual size of the image. And I guess I would have to save the image to change it on the file system. But right now I have lost pixels. I've reduced the resolution. I've changed the file size and not just the display size. I'm going to undo the resize that we just did because I plan to use this photograph in a video editing software, and so I don't want to lose any of the resolution that I have in the image. If I need to resize it later, I'll resize it in the video editing software and keep as much of the resolution as possible. Well, the next edit that I want to demonstrate is color adjustment. And so the image that comes directly from your camera probably doesn't have the best colors in terms of exposure, brightness, etc. For example, if you look at this image, the airplane is kind of dark here. You can't really see the detail in the airplane. The exposure is pretty good for everything in the photo, including the sky. But really the center of attraction for this photo, the reason for the photo, is the airplane, and the exposure, it's a little bit dark. The exposure isn't optimized for the airplane. So we can adjust the colors to bring back some of this detail that's lost here. Before I do the color adjustments though, I'm going to change the display size so that we can easily see the changes that we're about to make. You can make color adjustments directly on the image by going to Image Adjustments and selecting one of these options. However, that's going to change the underlying image, and that's the way GIMP works. But in Photoshop has this neat feature where you can do color adjustments via layers. And the advantage to that is it doesn't change the underlying image. It changes it on a layer. And you can add and remove layers if you want to add or remove color adjustments that you define. So to add a color adjustment via layer, go to Layers, New Adjustment Layer, and then select one of these options. I normally start with Levels. So this dialog box just tells me that it's adding a new layer for levels adjustment. So I'll click on OK. And to adjust the levels here, I normally drag this left control to the beginning of the histogram, which is pretty much there. There's not a whole lot to change. And the right control, I normally drag it to the beginning of the histogram. And what's really going to change things is the center control. So I can adjust the exposure for the overall image. And so I'm going to adjust it so that that you can see the detail of the airplane. Now it's a little, the sky's a little brighter, so you lose some detail in the sky, but the center of this photo is the airplane, so that's a pretty good selection there. And so as I said before, this color adjustment was added via layer. If you want to see that, go to Window, Layers, and you can see here that our level adjustment is just another layer above this photograph. And if I click on this eye, it'll turn it off. If I click back, it'll turn it on. So you can see the before and you can see the after. So there's other color adjustments that we could add. We'll go back to Layer, New Adjustment Layer. Hue and saturation is an interesting one. So we'll go ahead and add a layer for that. And so we can, saturated colors sometimes can improve an image. So we'll raise the saturation of this colors. And so the colors are more vibrant here. And again, if you wanted to see the difference, you can go to Layers, and we just added this hue and saturation layer. And so we can turn it off or turn it on. And maybe a little bit of a difference. But like I said, there's many other coloring options that you can use here. Brightness and contrast is an easy one to work with. Color balance, you can make some radical changes to sort of really change the overall look of the image. But I don't want to change the image that drastically. So let me go back to Layers, and I'm going to delete. So I'm going to click and drag the layer to the trash can here to delete a layer. So the hue and saturation, I might delete that too. I think I'll leave the one for levels because I think that did have a significant improvement on the picture. Next up, I'm going to show you how to add text to your image. There's a text tool. So to add text, select the text tool and then click somewhere in the image where you would like the text. And so I'll type it in here. And the options for the text tool are up at the top here. And so let's make this, we can make the text a little bit bigger than that. So maybe 160. Whoops, I guess I have to select the text first. And once it's selected, I can change the size of it. You can reposition the text with this tool. So maybe we'll put the text over there. If you wanted to change the color of the text, I'm going to select the text tool again, double click this text, select the color here, and I can choose a different color, and I'll click on OK. And so now we've changed the color of the text. And so also notice that text is a separate layer. So just like you can turn on and off the coloring layers, you can turn on and off the text layer. And this is nice because the text doesn't destroy the pixels on the image that it's over. It's on a separate layer. Next up, saving your work. With Photoshop and other multimedia tools, there's the concept of the project and then the media within the project. For example, if you want a copy of this image, if you just want to save a copy of this image that you can email or maybe include in a video, you would select File, save as a copy. That is, select the option here as a copy. Select the file type that you would like to save it as. PNG, JPEG, those are both good file types. And the difference between the file types is discussed elsewhere. And probably want to give it a name. So we'll call this maybe After Edits. And so we're going to save a copy of our project, or a copy of this image as a PNG file here. And we'll take non-interlaced. Now if we go back and open that file, so we'll go to File, Open, and I believe it's this one. We have just the image. Now it looks exactly like this, but notice the important difference here. We've lost all our layers. We've lost the metadata associated with this. If I wanted to change this text, I'm out of luck. And so if you save as just an image, you're going to lose all the metadata. For example, like layers and color adjustments in text, you're going to lose all of that information. So if you plan to edit it in the future, you want to also save the project. And so to save the project, again, you can go to File, Save As, but you would leave the format here as PSD. And so you're saving the project. So I'll just say PH, add PH here for Photoshop. And now when I click Save, click Yes. And now if I close this and I reopen the project, so I have the image out there and I also have the project here. So now when I open the project, I see that all the layers are preserved. And if I wanted to, I could go back in here and I could edit the text. And so that's the difference. If you save a copy of the image as a JPEG or PNG, you're going to lose all the metadata. So if you want to go back and edit, you also want to save your project. Now for some bonus features. First up, transparent backgrounds. Sometimes you want an image to blend in with its surroundings. For example, let's say I want to add this cartoon image to this aerial view of the field. Well, I could select the image, copy it, go back to the aerial view, and paste it. And that doesn't look so well because it's square and the background of the cartoon just doesn't really blend in with the image underneath it. So let's undo that. What we can do to improve that is make the background of this image transparent. You'll see that it makes a world of difference when we add the image to that aerial view. So to make the background of an image transparent, go to Image, Mode, Index Color, and make sure Transparency is selected. So it is selected. I'll click on OK. Now when I cut the background when I cut pixels out of this image, there'll be transparent pixels left over. And I could cut the background out using this lasso tool. And if it was a photorealistic image, that might be the only option that I have. But it's not a photorealistic image. The background is white. It's a solid color. And so there's better ways of selecting the background. For example, the magic wand here. And so with the magic wand, when you click on pixels, it'll select all adjacent pixels. So I'm clicking over here, and we'll click on this area, and we'll remove that, and remove that. And that checkerboard that you see, that's not what's going to be the background. Checkerboard means transparent. So let's try that. So let's go select all, and let's copy this image. And now we'll paste it over the field. There, that looks a lot better. Well, I think we might be able to improve on this a little bit. I think it might look better if the plane was pointed left. And we can flip that by going to, I think it's Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. There, that looks pretty good. Although it does look a little bit oversized for the field. So we can change that by going to Edit, Transform, Scale. And now I have these handles on the side of the image. And if I hold down the Shift key, it'll lock our friend the aspect ratio, which I think is what we want to do in this case. So we'll get it to a size that we like. Now the scale transform is a little special. You have to commit it by clicking on this check mark. Otherwise, I won't be able to do anything. So let me commit that transform, and maybe we'll move that image up there. There, I think that looks pretty good. Back at this image, now if we wanted to, we could save this picture as a separate file with this transparent background and use it in some other work, such as a video. And if you did save it, you would have to save it using a file type that supported transparent background, like PNG. I have one more bonus feature for you, and that's Clone Stamp. Clone Stamp is a very useful feature that allows you to fill in one section of an image with pixels that come from another section of the image. And from that description alone, it doesn't sound very useful, but let me show you an example. Let's say that we wanted it to appear that there's more planes on the parking lot here, because there is some empty space here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the pixels from this area of the image with planes over here. Now to do that, you would select Clone Stamp, and that's this tool. I'm going to press and hold this triangle in the lower right-hand corner just to make sure I have the right tool there. Yes, I'll take that Clone Stamp. And to define the area from where the pixels are coming, you hold down the Alt key and then select. And then to draw from that area, I'm going to click and drag over here, and you can see that it's copying the pixels from that source area to this destination area. And the angle isn't quite right, and we could fix that. But it does, I think, show how you might use the Clone Stamp. Actually, maybe a better example of Clone Stamp, we could get rid of this gray area in the grass here. And so let's select Clone Stamp. We'll go Alt, and I'll select a nice green area here, and then I'll fill in over there. And if you do use Clone Stamp, I'm going to reset the source area again. And if you do use Clone Stamp, it's a good idea to reset the source area often so you don't get kind of a repeated pattern. So I'll set it again there, and then kind of finish up here. And maybe I should have reset it again, but I'm kind of in a hurry here, so we'll just do with what we have. That looks pretty good. Let me show you one other feature that's like Clone Stamp. So we're going to step backwards here a little bit so we can demonstrate this other feature. And so this other feature is content-aware fill, which is only available, as far as I know, in Photoshop. I don't think it's in GIMP. But what you do is you would select a portion of the image that you would like to get rid of, because we want to get rid of this brown area. And we got rid of it with the Clone Stamp by copying from a destination area. But a faster method is to select the area you want to get rid of, and then go to Edit, Fill, and make sure Content Aware is selected. And when you click on OK, it does the hard work of looking around to see how to fill in that area. I'm going to be real aggressive here, and let's say that we wanted to get rid of this building, and let's see what it's going to put in its place. This one might be kind of hard because there's not a lot of context to go with here. So let's go to Edit, Fill, and we'll make sure Content Aware is selected. Well, that's not bad. That did a pretty good job, I think, of getting rid of that building. You'll be surprised at how often Content Aware Fill and Clone Stamp comes in handy as you're working with photos.